Hey y'all, and welcome to PolitiBrawl. My name is Brian, and Vivek Ramaswamy does what he does best and absolutely clowns on these know-nothing protesters. Let's dive in.
I think when you say that you're going to reward the teachers who have higher merit, you're going to reward them with higher pay, I think what you're really saying and giving yourself the chance to say the subtext of it is that a lot of other teachers can be let go under the guise of that. Maybe setting the bar too high and then firing a lot of teachers. That's what I'm afraid of.
What I want is to attract the best. So I know a lot of young people who want to go into the teaching profession who aren't going to do it because they don't make enough money doing it.
Sure.
I think we could make our state a magnet for the best educators across the country. But I do think there has to be some performance-based element to it. It's not all teaching to the test. I think teachers know, for example, in the school, who's carrying their weight and who's not. So one of the things you could have is peer assessments in the school. You could have parental assessments. Often parents know whether their kids are thriving in the classroom or not. So I'm open-minded to how we do it. But the status quo isn't working. I think we have to achieve at a higher level for our students in math and reading and writing and civic education, even financial literacy. And here's the other thing in our schools that I want to improve is, no, it's not a political point here, but it's a really important point. Time, the utilization of time in our schools. 8 hours a day that our kids are spending there, there's a lot better way we could even use that time, using technology, using advanced approaches that are now available that didn't exist when we were in school, to on a tailored basis give every kid the best possible classroom experience they can have. And I realize that's not what gets posted on social media, or that's not what necessarily gets on the evening news or whatever. These are areas where we could have rational adult conversations that have nothing to do with private versus public, but how do you improve the delivery of education? And I'm here for it. I'm all in for it. I want to listen to every Ohioan.
I'm in for it too.
Woman had a question if she wanted to ask. I promised you, if you wanted your question, I promised you'll take care.
I mean, the thing is that you're in Mason right now. And
yeah, I grew up not far from here.
Our diversity is our superpower here.
Yes, it is.
Right? It is our superpower here. This is why we live here, because we have, 100 languages spoken in our schools, close to 100 languages. We have people from many different countries here, and some of my friends are scared. I'm out here because I have cover. I'm a blue-eyed old white lady, so I have some cover. Yes. But my friends are scared. I have friends, my kids' friends, their families are scared because they're worried about they're going to get picked up on the streets.
Okay,
and then get sent somewhere.
As someone who's not blue-eyed myself, okay, let me address my perspective on this. I'd frame it a little bit differently. I think our strength is not our diversity. Our strength is what unites us across our diversity, all right? And part of what I want to bring back are the ideals that unite. No, it's actually not. Well, I'll tell you why it's not.
I understand.
I'll tell you how I translate it. I'll translate it to action. We'll translate it to action. I think every high school senior who graduates from an Ohio high school should have to pass the same civics test that every legal immigrant has to pass before they become a voting citizen of the country. Because I want people to know about our country, to be proud of it. That's our true strength. That's what I care about.
Ma'am, what do you mean by you understand that? Because I don't think you do. This protester clearly doesn't understand what Vivek is actually talking about. Because if she did, she'd have no problem with it. That's because, deep down, she cares more about getting her message across, virtue signaling like an ugly peacock to the rest of the flock. It's not going to work. Okay? She wants to virtue signal, and it's not working here. No one's buying it anymore. There's a reason that in 2024, the GOP took back the House, took back the Senate, and, by the way, took back the presidency. And not to mention, won all 7 of the swing states. So if you want to talk about what people actually want out of their education, you probably need to take a step back, think to yourself, is there something I'm missing here? Am I so out of touch? No, it's the children who are wrong. And that's not the only Simpsons reference I'm going to reference here, because there's something called the Dance of the Lemons. In other words, this is a way that the education system shuffles around bad teachers because they're so desperate for teachers that they will take all the bad ones, they'll shuffle them around, take them to another school district just outside of their own so no one really knows what this person's like, but that way they can actually meet their quotas, they can meet their numbers, and that way your kids' taxpayer-funded daycares are essentially paid for. And I don't like saying that, okay? I do not like saying that our educators are essentially a whole bunch of daycare givers. But that's a sad reality. Our education system is so rank with the ridiculous abuse of the system by administrators. And it gets even worse once you remember there was a whole law passed called No Child Left Behind. I am a child of that, and boy did it leave all of us behind. All because they thought it was a good idea to make your test scores determine where your tax dollars went. If you have bad test scores, your tax dollars don't go to those regions. Now, that sounds like a really Republican idea, right? That, well, we need to let states decide these matters. We need to decentralize the problem, right? Well, it was written by a Kennedy, Ted Kennedy. You know, the man who managed to escape his car but didn't do anything for his girlfriend and child once he dove it off of a literal bridge into the water. But that's Democrat legislation for you, because the whole point of No Child Left Behind was to make sure that rural areas of the country don't get tax dollars for their transportation. In other words, if there was an interstate or a highway that's funded by the United States tax person, you and me, by the way, well, if you were in a rural area, you don't get that money. Why? Because your test scores aren't high enough. Well, why aren't our test scores high enough? Well, because you didn't teach to the test. Okay, so people adjusted and they taught to the test. And now we have 2 full generations of Disney-brained morons. And again, I'm a child of this nonsense. I've seen it work firsthand. There's a reason why my parents pulled me out of the public education system and put me into a private homeschooling group about 15 years before that was the popular thing to do. Remember, homeschooling has doubled since the pandemic. And so, Vivek Ramaswamy is talking some common sense ideas to some educators, and they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it because that means that they're going to get reviewed. That means that their job might not be as important as they think it is. And I'm going to be honest, it is tough being a public school educator. It's tough being an educator in general. Getting children to remember information, that's kind of a tough thing to do here. There's almost something superhuman about it, and that's why we're supposed to venerate teachers, but not this. Not this protesting nonsense. Not this ridiculous mantra that they have about themselves, where they give themselves the halo instead of everyone else. Everyone else deserves to look at a teacher and say thank you. But the teacher, it's almost like the American veteran that goes off to war to fight for the United States. Let's be honest, most veterans did not fight to protect the United States, they just fought to protect our interests. Just like so many educators try to educate children, what they're really doing is babysitting them. That is a sad, ugly truth, and I do not want that to mean to look down on teachers in any possible way. Because these people do something that's tough, and they do it for low pay, and they do it for long hours, and they do it for 8 months, 9 months, sometimes 10 months if you don't really have a summer vacation out of the year, and then if you have a summer vacation, they got to re-educate the kids all over again. There's something that, however, that we can do to make our education great again, and that is by breaking up the teachers' unions. That's not by decentralizing education, however, it's by centralizing it. I believe firmly that our education system needs to be centralized not based on test scores, but what you can actually know, what you actually understand. Now, what you can regurgitate on a test, but something on a written scale that you are able to pass. I don't know, like a citizenry test. That is exactly what Vivek is bringing up here. These teachers don't want that. They don't want change to the curriculum because that means that they have to change their entire classroom structure. They don't want change to come into their curriculum, not just because of the classroom structure, but because it means more work. They're overworked, and I understand that. But you know what? At a certain point, you got to ask yourself, is this working? And the answer is no. The answer is no. Vivek is on the forefront of that because he managed to take advantage of a system that was broken. There's literally a sign in the background saying that he got a $50,000 scholarship. Well, if it was available to him, I'd take that money too, okay? Getting an education, particularly the one that Vivek got, and then running the American gauntlet like he did, we need to make that more accessible for the average American and not just a select few based on certain metrics. That's not fair to the American people. That's not fair to the individual. That's not fair to the taxpayer. That's not fair to you and me. That's what Vivek is talking about, and these protesters simply don't understand that, and they refuse to understand that. Folks, my name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here on PolitiBrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. Until then, y'all have a good one.